A silent deal between Canada and Denmark is about to reshape more than energy. It could redefine who controls the minerals that power the world's most advanced technologies. While Washington debates tariffs and Europe scrambles for alternatives, Ottawa and Copenhagen are quietly aligning around one of the rarest assets on Earth: critical minerals. These are the elements hidden deep underground that make smartphones function. Wind turbines spin and electric cars drive. And now, Canada and Denmark may be creating a supply chain strong enough to challenge China's dominance. This isn't a story about mining. It's about control over the invisible building blocks of global technology. Today, we're exploring how Canada and Denmark's rare earth alliance could reshape the future of global tech. Welcome to Geo Capitalist, where we decode global wealth one power shift at a time. If you want to understand the hidden deals and alliances that shape trade, energy, and technology, stories the mainstream often overlooks, make sure to subscribe. The future economy is being decided in places most people never think about. And we're here to break it down. Rare earth elements might sound obscure, but they're everywhere in modern life. Neodymium, dysprosium, and terbium are essential for powerful magnets inside smartphones, laptops, and fighter jets. Lanthanum and cerium are used in camera lenses, catalytic converters, and batteries. Without them, the devices and machines that define the 21st century simply wouldn't work. Here's the catch. While demand has surged with the rise of electric vehicles, clean energy, and advanced defense systems, supply is concentrated in just a few regions. China controls over 60% of global rare earth production and processes an even larger share of refining capacity. That means most of the world's technology supply chain runs through Beijing's hands. This imbalance is not new, but in 2025 it's becoming urgent. Global demand for rare earths is projected to nearly double by 2030, driven by exponential growth in EV batteries and renewable energy technologies. Governments from Washington to Brussels are racing to secure access, but most are behind. And this is where Canada and Denmark come in. Canada holds some of the largest untapped deposits of rare earths outside Asia, from Quebec to the Northwest Territories. Denmark, through its control over Greenland, sits on one of the richest concentrations of these minerals anywhere on Earth. Alone, they're important players. Together, they could build a Western supply chain strong enough to challenge China's grip. Canada has quietly positioned itself as one of the few democratic nations with the geological resources to compete in rare earths. In 2025, Ottawa rolled out its critical minerals strategy, backed by billions of dollars in public and private investment. The goal is simple: develop domestic supply chains that reduce dependence on China and strengthen ties with trusted allies. Across Quebec, Ontario, and the Northwest Territories, exploration projects are ramping up for minerals like lithium, cobalt, nickel, and rare earth oxides. These aren't just rocks in the ground, they're the foundation of batteries, semiconductors, wind turbines, and defense systems. And the Canadian government is putting money on the table to fast-track development. One of the strategy's cornerstones is investment in processing capacity. Mining rare earths is only half the battle. The real choke point is refining, where China dominates nearly 90% of global capacity. Canada is funding research hubs in places like Saskatchewan to build Western refining expertise from scratch. The idea is to move beyond raw exports and build a full value chain, from mine to magnet. At the same time, Ottawa is leveraging trade policy. Canada is negotiating critical mineral agreements with the EU, Japan, and the United States. But Denmark's role could be the most strategic. By linking Canada's mining and refining efforts with Greenland's raw resources, the two countries could form a transatlantic bridge for rare earth security. For Canada, this is not just about economics. It's about national security, industrial independence, and global relevance. With China tightening its grip on exports and the U.S. focused inward, Canada is seizing its moment and finding an unexpected ally in Denmark. When people think of Denmark, They imagine wind turbines on the North Sea or Copenhagen's green urban design. But Denmark's real leverage in the rare earth game lies thousands of kilometers away, in Greenland. As a self-governing territory within the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland is home to some of the richest deposits of rare earth elements outside of Asia. Geologists estimate that Greenland's Kvanefjeld deposit alone could hold enough rare earth oxides to rival China's output for decades. Other sites across southern Greenland contain critical minerals like uranium, zinc, and niobium, essential for high-tech applications. While the scale is massive, the challenge has always been political. Greenland's population has resisted some mining projects due to environmental concerns, and Denmark has had to balance local interests with global demand. But in 2025, the equation is shifting. Rising global competition over rare earths means Denmark and Greenland can no longer ignore the opportunity. Copenhagen is now working more closely with international partners to develop mining projects under stricter sustainability rules, aiming to turn Greenland into a reliable Western source of critical minerals. This is where Canada becomes vital. Denmark controls the resource base, but it lacks large-scale refining experience and the financial weight to move quickly. Canada, with its critical minerals strategy and growing expertise in processing, can provide exactly what Denmark and Greenland need. Together, they could create a transatlantic supply line that bypasses China and secures critical resources for Europe and North America. The Arctic may seem remote, but in the global technology race, Greenland is now a frontline asset, and Denmark holds the key. On their own, Canada and Denmark are mid-sized players, but together their strengths form a rare combination. Canada brings scale, finance, and decades of mining expertise. Denmark brings control over Greenland's deposits, one of the few places outside Asia where rare earths exist in commercially viable concentrations. The logic is straightforward. Combine Canada's capacity to develop and refine with Denmark's access to untapped reserves, and you have the foundation of a Western supply chain. This matters because rare earths are not like oil or gas. You can't simply drill a well and ship the product. They require complex refining, specialized knowledge, and years of investment before they can be used in magnets, semiconductors, or batteries. By pooling resources, Canada and Denmark can share the burden of those costs and accelerate timelines. There's also a political advantage. Canada is seen as a trusted partner by both the United States and the European Union, while Denmark is firmly embedded within Europe's decision-making framework. An alliance between them would be uniquely positioned to supply both North American and European markets, reducing the risk of overdependence on any single customer. And then there's China. Today, Beijing doesn't just dominate production. It dominates refining and export controls. By 2025, it has already hinted at tightening restrictions on certain rare earth exports, sending shockwaves through global markets. A Canadian-Danish alliance isn't just about opportunity, it's about resilience. It signals that the West is ready to build its own infrastructure for critical minerals and to do so without relying on Beijing's goodwill. In short, the partnership makes sense economically, politically, and strategically. And it may be the only way the West can realistically compete in time. China has dominated rare earths for decades, controlling much of mining and an even larger share of refining. That concentration lets small policy changes ripple across industries, from electric mobility to precision manufacturing. It wasn't accidental. While others idled mines during downturns, China expanded separation capacity, trained engineers, and built integrated logistics. The choke point isn't ore. It's the chemistry that turns concentrates into oxides and magnets. A Canada-Denmark corridor shifts the equation. Greenland holds large deposits that can be developed under strict environmental standards. Canada adds financing, technical expertise, and a growing push into midstream processing so concentrates don't travel halfway around the world. Tie those resources to transatlantic demand, and you create a regional loop. Resource, processing, advanced components, all inside trusted jurisdictions. So who gets replaced? Not in one sweep and not entirely. But every ton refined outside China reduces dependency, dampens price swings, and gives buyers negotiating power. Automakers, turbine makers, and electronics firms gain alternative options. Competition improves quality, stabilizes planning cycles, and encourages longer contracts at predictable prices. The real risk is timing. Demand is rising faster than capacity additions. If permitting stalls or refineries slip behind schedule, incumbents keep leverage. That's why coordination matters. Shared standards, bankable offtakes, transparent auditing, and predictable rules. In the end, this alliance will be judged less by headlines and more by consistency, steady ramp-ups, reliable separation, and magnets delivered on schedule. Quiet reliability, not one blockbuster deal, is how incumbency gets chipped away. Washington recognizes the vulnerability. The United States still imports most rare earth inputs, and domestic separation capacity remains limited. Projects in California and Texas are advancing, but environmental reviews, financing cycles, and engineering bottlenecks slow timelines. In parallel, policy attention is split among industrial reshoring, tariff debates, and conventional energy priorities, leaving fewer resources for painstaking midstream build-out. That is why a Canada-Denmark alignment matters for the U.S. It could become a friendly lifeline or a missed leadership chance. On the upside, supply from trusted partners reduces exposure to sudden export controls or price spikes. Automakers and advanced manufacturers across key regions can plan with longer contracts tied to transparent standards rather than volatile spot markets. Universities and labs gain collaborators for magnet research and recycling, accelerating a circular ecosystem. The downside is strategic influence. If Ottawa and Copenhagen, working with Greenland, set technical specs, auditing norms, and pricing references, Washington might follow rather than lead. U.S. agencies would still shape safety and environmental rules at home, yet the center of gravity for transatlantic rare earth policy could drift northward. That prospect may nudge the U.S. toward faster incentives for separation, metal making, and magnets, plus streamlined permitting for responsible projects. In short, a reliable Canadian-Danish corridor would help American factories in the near term, even as it highlights a gap in long-term leadership. The question is not access versus no access. It is whether access arrives with influence or arrives on someone else's terms. The implications go far beyond mining licenses. Rare earths are embedded in everyday and advanced technologies, traction motors for EVs, direct-drive wind turbines, precision robotics, satellite components, advanced optics, audio systems, and medical imaging. When supply is concentrated, innovation slows because engineers design to what's reliably available, not to what's ideal. A diversified, transparent corridor anchored by Canada and Denmark would loosen that constraint. For global manufacturers, the biggest gain is planning certainty. Multi-year offtake contracts with auditing and sustainability metrics let procurement teams lock in volumes without fear of sudden policy shifts. That stability reduces working capital volatility and encourages investment in higher efficiency motors and next-generation magnet chemistries that use fewer constrained elements like dysprosium. There is also the ecosystem effect. Refining attracts metallization, which attracts magnet fabrication, which in turn pulls in component makers for drives, pumps, and actuators. Once that cluster forms, training and R&D scale around it, cutting costs and speeding iteration. Canada's research hubs and Denmark's universities are natural partners for pilot lines, recycling methods, and life cycle tracking built on open standards. For consumers, the benefits show up quietly. More efficient cars, sturdier wind fleets, better sound systems, and longer-lasting devices. For governments, they show up as resilience, less exposure to single-point shocks, and more leverage in trade talks. If Ottawa and Copenhagen can turn today's intent into synchronized projects, the payoff will not be a single headline moment, but a compounding technological edge that keeps delivering year after year. Over the next 12 to 18 months, watch 3 signals that will decide whether this alliance becomes real infrastructure or just a headline. First, Greenland, permitting milestones, community benefit agreements, and early site work at priority deposits. If projects advance with credible environmental safeguards, capital will follow. Second, processing. Canada's midstream build-out, pilot separation lines moving to commercial, scale, metal-making capacity funded, and magnet fabrication announcements near major manufacturing hubs. Third, policy glue. Long-term offtakes that link mines, refiners, and end users across the Atlantic with shared traceability and recycling standards. Momentum will require patience. These are chemical plants and logistics networks, not pop-up factories. But steady execution can shift bargaining power in global tech. A corridor that delivers predictable volumes, audited emissions, and fair dealing contracts becomes the default choice for buyers who value reliability over drama. If Ottawa and Copenhagen sustain coordination, aligning investment banks, export agencies, and research programs, their footprint will compound year after year. And that's all for today. If you found this breakdown valuable, watch our next video. It connects directly to what's unfolding. And don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us decode these global shifts without compromise. Let us know in the comments. Is this simply diversification or the start of a Western supply chain revolution? Either way, the world is watching. This was Canada and Denmark's rare earth alliance could reshape global tech. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.